Okay, next chapter, how to set yourself up as a freelancer. The first thing you need to do is register as self-employed. Now, I'm going to be talking about this from a UK point of view. So if you are in the US or anywhere different, you may just need to check some of the information. The reason that I'm doing it in the UK is because this is where I pay all of my taxes. The majority, actually all of my clients are from the UK. You can choose to do it differently. For instance, if you're planning to travel a lot and you're a digital nomad, there are actually countries that are really good to work from that are better. Things like Singapore and I think Malaysia are quite good for tax. But all of my clients are in the UK, so I'm registered as self-employed in the UK. And this means that I have to pay my taxes in the UK. This means that I had to tell HMRC that I'm self-employed. So being self-employed means that you have to pay taxes. And in order to do that, you have to complete a self-assessment tax return every year. To be able to do that, you need to keep a record of all of your income and expenses throughout the year. And of course, you have to pay national insurance as well. So to register as self-employed, you go to the HMRC website, and this is where you need to decide what your business structure is going to be. You can be a sole trader, a partner in a business partnership, or a limited company. Figuring out what is the best thing for you, very personal as to what you would prefer. I'm a sole trader, which means that I'm in charge of every element of my business, and I prefer it that way. I think if your business is new or small, to minimize the admin, I think sole trader is a really good way to go, but I would do your research or consult your accountant, which I will get on to next. So for me, finances are not my strong suit at all. So the first thing I did was hire an accountant, and this isn't a massive cost. They actually only charge me when I do the self-assessment, which is once a year, and I think it's a couple of £100. But I just love the fact that I have that accountant there that I can go to if I have any questions about anything financial when it comes to running my business. You could also outsource and hire a bookkeeper, which is somebody that kind of manages your day-to-day admin of your accounts. So to be able to do a self-assessment, you need to be keeping track of every piece of income that you get and also your expenses. Your expenses are anything that you buy for your business. You can actually minimize your tax by claiming on your expenses. So it's really important that you have a really good system in place where you're keeping track of everything. I have used many. I've used Excel spreadsheets. I have been at the end of the tax year and had mountains of receipts to get through. Please do not do that. It is soul destroying. And the best thing that I have found is this app called the Lit app. I highly recommend it. It's an app that I have on my phone, and whenever I buy something for my business, something for the laptop or something for the office, or if I'm out at a meeting and I have to buy a coffee, whatever it is, I take a picture of the receipt, of the paper receipt on the app, and just input the details, and I can throw the receipt away, and then it's stored automatically in the app. I also use the app to invoice all of my clients, so all of my self-employed income is already in the app, and then I just give my accountant access to it, and she can use all the data in there to really easily file my self-assessment. So I will put a link below for the Lit app. Highly recommend it. I think it's $11.99 a month. Best investment ever for your business. You need to stay on track of your financial admin. Another massive thing as well, saving your tax. So we have to pay our own taxes, and what I would recommend is saving between 20 to 30% of your tax every time you get paid. So if I got paid £1,000 from my client, I would save 30% of that and put it into an account that I do not touch. Don't be tempted to spend it. So once my self-assessment has been processed, I will probably get a tax bill from HMRC, and I already have all the money there waiting for me to pay that tax bill. The worst thing you can do, and I definitely know people who have left it to the last minute and have somehow had to find like 20 grand to pay their tax bill. So yeah, I save all of mine in a premium bonds account, and I win every month, which is awesome. So it's making me money as well. So yeah, that's my little tip. Also worth noting that if you start earning over 85k, I think it is now, you will start having to charge VAT. But again, ask your accountant. It sounds a bit tricky, but actually it's super easy. You just need to keep records of your income and your expenses. You need to file your self-assessment every year. And if you are over the threshold, you need to be paying VAT. Okay, the second part of setting yourself up as a freelancer, protecting your business. I really recommend taking out insurance because depending on the type of insurance you have, you are protected. I mean, this is your livelihood. If something happens to you and you can't work, for example, you need to have protection. Taking out insurance is so important to make sure that you and your business are protected from financial loss and any legal trouble. There are different insurances that you can take out. I've listed them all in the guide. There's public liability, there's professional insurance. Have a little look and figure out what you think is important. I know that it can really add up as a cost. So just figure out what is good for you and what you feel comfortable with. I also always use Money Supermarket to compare prices, so I really recommend that as well. Another point, setting up for the future. So when you are self-employed, you do not get automatically entered into a pension scheme like you would if you're employed. So it would be my recommendation to open up your own private pension so that you can start saving for the future. You obviously would get state pension, but it might not be enough to live on comfortably. So just putting away some money every month, I think, is a really good idea. I have a direct debit coming out of my bank account that goes into my private pension. And don't forget to claim tax relief on those pension payments. It's also worth thinking about investing, but I am in no means qualified to be giving advice on this. I know that there's a girl who's amazing at this called Laura, who's in the club, so go and check her out, and she has some amazing advice for investing and making more money. Okay, the next thing to do to get set up as a freelancer is setting your rate. This can be quite tricky because people don't really like to talk about money, and so it can be really hard to benchmark yourself against other freelancers in your niche. So I'm going to run through a couple of things that I do or did when I was first setting my rate. And just to note as well, you can negotiate your rate with each client. So for instance, if you're working for like a bigger company, you could go higher because they're more likely to have more money. And also it just depends on how much you want the work, how much you need the work. The great thing is that you don't have to stick to one rate. You can have your sort of rate in your head ready to go with your rate card, but you can negotiate and you can change it depending on the circumstance. So yes, there's no one size fits all, and this is also because you can be working with clients in different ways. You could work on an hourly rate, you could work on a day rate, and you can work on a project rate. So there are a couple of things that you could ask yourself to help determine your rate. The first thing is knowing your worth. Knowing how much you would charge as a full-time employee is really important. Don't forget that as a freelancer, you're going to be charging more than this, but it's really good to know that. So as a social media strategist, would I, as an employer, probably be getting, let's just say, £75,000 per annum, so per year. You also need to know how much value you're bringing to the client. If you have lots of experience in your niche, then you are bringing lots of value to the client. If you're just starting out, then you might have to lower your rate a little bit because you don't have that experience and that knowledge yet. The second question to ask is knowing how much you need to support your lifestyle. So for this, you need to have a rough idea of the sort of yearly salary that you would like to be making as a minimum. Don't forget that you need to be adding in that 30% tax too. The next thing you need to do is calculate all of your business expenses. So you need to figure out how much it's going to cost you to run your business. So how much does your equipment cost? So laptop, office, that kind of thing. Do you need to be traveling lots to work? Do you need other equipment? Think about marketing, think about the cost of insurance, think about any other overheads that you might incur. You also need to think about that sick pay and holiday pay and factor that into your costings as well. Then you need to think about your non-billable time. So this is the time that you can't actually bill to your clients, but that you need to account for when you're running a freelancing business. So the time it takes to do all your admin, the time it takes to market yourself to try and find new clients. In general, a freelancer's hourly breakdown is 60% billable time and 40% non-billable time. The next thing you can do is benchmark yourself. So have conversations with other freelancers in your niche. You can also look at some resources like Upwork, which is a really popular freelancing platform. They publish a sort of report on freelancing rates each year, which is really handy. I think I've linked this in the guide, so definitely check that out. It's really helpful. And then the other thing to take into consideration is geographical location. So for instance, when I was working in Bali for clients, the cost of living is much lower there, so I couldn't get away with charging what I would charge in London. So just be aware of that when you're making your rate. If you are still struggling with this, please do get in touch with me and I will try to help you as well. And the other thing to mention here is don't forget to charge for late payments. One of the most important things to have in place is a contract for any new client that you bring on. This is just like a legal document that outlines all the terms and conditions of the project. It will probably say what the project is, the scope of work, how long the project takes, the sort of delivery dates, and also the payment term. So one of the payment terms might be that the client has to pay you within 30 days of receiving the invoice. If they don't pay you within those 30 days, then you can actually charge a late payment fee. So you would calculate the late payment fee and then re-invoice them with the original cost plus the late payment fee. At the moment, I think it's 8%. This is actually a UK law to protect freelancers, so definitely make sure you check it out. So once you've set your rate, I would definitely recommend creating a rate card template. I've included one of these in the guide. This is just so that when you start having conversations with prospective clients, you can be really efficient and you can send over your rate card, and it just gets the ball rolling on negotiating the rate. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stick to it. You can also change it, but having that template in place will just save you so much time. I like to keep mine really simple because when I'm emailing a prospective client, I don't want to bombard them, but this is completely up to you and probably will depend on your freelancing niche and what services you're actually offering. If it's really complicated, then you might want to make a slightly more detailed rate card. So I've touched on the rate card. I've also touched on the contract, which I do have a template for on my website. And there are some other additional templates that you need just to get started with your freelancing. This one is kind of dependent on your niche, but I always send a new client a client briefing form. This just gives me an idea of what they're looking for and really details exactly what they're after, what their targets are, what their goals are. And it's just a really good first step when you're having conversations with clients. It also means that when you jump on a call, which I usually do for free, which I call a consultation call, it means that you've got a lot of information, you can do your research, and that you can go onto that call really prepared. You'll also need an invoice template. If you decide to use the Lit app for your bookkeeping and your financial admin, you don't need to worry about this because there's already an invoice template in there that's completely automatic, so you just don't need to do anything, which is great. If you don't use the Lit app, you will have to create your own invoice, and you need to make sure that you're invoicing after every piece of work, otherwise you won't get paid. And then the final thing you need is a portfolio. Now, you could have a portfolio that you could send over as a PDF when you're emailing. I prefer to do it as a website. I prefer a website because I see it as a long-term investment. You can easily make changes, you can add lots of case studies and testimonials, you can really build it out. Plus, it means that you can actually be found organically online. So it's a really good way to get inbound leads. In the next chapter, I'm going to go through everything you need to know about what to include in your website or your online portfolio.